It's finally here. Super Bowl week is upon us. As Cam mentioned, the Superdome hosting the most Super Bowls ever for an arena. So there's a lot of history there. Let's pick up our newspapers, Peter, shall we? The biggest storyline, headline, heading into Super Bowl week in 2024, 2025, Peter, is...
That team in red chasing history, Jamie. No team in the Super Bowl era has ever won 3 Super Bowls in a row. In fact, no team in the Super Bowl era has won 2 Super Bowls in a row and had the opportunity to even three-peat. They've never even made it to the Super Bowl. Teams have gotten close, but no one had gotten to this stage. They are on the doorstep of doing what no team and no dynasty in NFL history has done since we started playing this glamorous game in the end of January or the early February. You go through the names, and it's legendary dynasties. Of course, the Packers, if you string it together and say, well, they had an NFL championship and 2 Super Bowls, you could say they did. But since we had the Super Bowl, Packers went 2 and fell short in that third year. The Dolphins, 72 Dolphins, obviously go undefeated. They went to go 3 in a row. They fell short and couldn't do the job. You go through all of the different eras and all of the different generations. 70 Steelers, multiple times had won 2 in a row, did not win 3 in a row. The 80s 49ers, of course, you know that Montana and Rice had won 2 straight. The Giants knocked them off in an NFC championship game. Matt Barr kicks the field goal, and Leonard Marshall, of course, sacks Joe Montana. And the Giants stopped their opportunity to go for 3. Even in the 90s, we had a couple teams. The Cowboys tried doing it 3 in a row. They fell short. Obviously, the Niners took one in between 3 of those Super Bowls for the Cowboys. And then the Broncos won 2 straight. Elway retires. Brian Griese was not going to win that third. And then in the 2000s, the New England Patriots, 03 and 04, they went back-to-back. That Broncos team with Champ Bailey and, of course, quarterback Jake Plummer stopped them in the divisional round. Here are the Chiefs, the team of a generation. Kyle mentioned it last year that his son Calvin is going to be a teenager soon. And when you look back at who were those teams when you were a kid, it's only one for this generation. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. The same as for my son, 8 years old. You're going to go back to him and say, who were those teams? There's only one. It was the Chiefs. They've already won 3. They're now looking to win 4, and they're looking to be the first team to do it 3 in a row. I treasure the history of the NFL. I really value the teams that have done it before us. This is an NFL era where there is parity, where there is free agency, and there are so many good young quarterbacks looking to take down this dynasty, and just none of them have yet. Jalen Hurts gets a second shot at it, but I'm looking at history. The first team ever to go and complete the three-peat, and the first team ever to even be in the Super Bowl with the opportunity to even get there.
And Peter, I'm the counter of you. I'm just looking at the Eagles and how can they spit in the face of history? How do they flip the table on this thing? How do the Eagles disrupt that inertia that is the Kansas City Chiefs boulder just sitting there? Can Saquon Barkley do it again? Can he have a truly, you want to talk about history, this would be historical, this kind of run by a running back, not only through the regular season in yards and accolades, but through the playoffs, including the wild card round. Can he do this? And can he do it against the Steve Spagnuolo defense that has never given up a 100-yard rusher in the playoffs? 18 games in the playoffs under Spags, 0 100-yard rushers. Saquon gets 100 yards getting off the bus. What's going to give there? And then I look at Mahomes. If you're going to try to beat this team in the playoffs, of course the Eagles can. They're incredibly talented. They're experienced. But will they? How confident are you on Monday about Patrick Mahomes losing a playoff game, let alone in the Super Bowl? Remember, you know he's 17-3 in the playoffs. 17-3. He was once 8-3, which is an incredible playoff record. And then he said, no, I'll win 9 playoff games in a row. You might also say, all right, you mentioned Spagnuolo. How about Vic Fangio? Patrick Mahomes has faced Vic Fangio as the defensive coordinator 8 times. He's 8-0. 8 times Vic Fangio has spent the entire week trying to figure out how to stop the Patrick Mahomes offense and beat them, and he never, ever has. So you might just think, I don't know, maybe the Chiefs just have too much, and if you think they get the calls, fine. It's another thing you have to go against. But I've seen teams that feel like this lose. I remember the 18-0 Patriots. I was in Arizona for that Super Bowl. All the talk that week on Radio Row was how much will they beat the Giants by? You can't beat this team. They're a team of destiny. No, they lost to David Tyree, who got into the smoothie business after this. Like, it can happen. I remember the Matt Leinart, Reggie Bush Trojans. They were going against a Texas team that was incredible, and yet ESPN for 2 weeks leading up to the game did this recurring series of historical dominant franchises that could maybe beat USC. Would they lose to the Tom Osborne Cornhuskers? Would they lose to the Notre Dame Four Horsemen? They were doing a whole series of it. It was great. And then they went and lost to the Vince Young Longhorns. It can happen. It will happen. And believe me, this matchup is nothing like those. This is not the Patriots, David, Tyree, Eli Manning against the Giants. This is a really, really, really good Eagles team. But I know a lot of people and a lot of friends, a lot of people on social kind of, I'm sure it's the Chiefs. How do you beat the Chiefs? How do you bet against the Chiefs? I get it completely. But the Eagles have a history of finding a way in games like this. How do they get it done? How do they spit in the face of all that three-peat history?
Yeah, and the way they're going to do that, Kyle, is really by the makeup of this team. I think the other storyline in this is what Howie Roseman has done and how he's built this team and the risk that he's taken to build this team. It's very hard to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, but then when you talk about playing them twice in 3 years in this big game, it's remarkable, and I think he deserves a lot of credit. I think about the risk that he took. You look at Mekhi Becton and what he did with that. You look at his situation. Mekhi Becton, here's this guy that was drafted as a tackle for the Jets, didn't work out. They go around and they say, you know what? We all know that wasn't the right fit for him. The perfect fit for him was playing at that guard position. And he is another big reason why Saquon Barkley is able to do what he's done. I think about what he's done even, on the other side of the ball. When you think about, with Saquon. Saquon, and people might forget this because of the success that he's had this season, but there was still this belief that maybe he's on the back end of it. Running backs, they wear out a little earlier, and maybe he wasn't valued in the Giants, and there was this question about his ability, especially coming off of a season where he had 962 yards. Now, of course, that's far gone. People go, no, we never doubted Saquon. You kind of did. You thought about his age being 27 years old. I think on the other side, though, Zach Bond and what Zach Bond has done, here's another risky take for Howie Roseman. Here's a guy in New Orleans, he does some special teams. He comes over here, all-pro type player, making huge plays, big-time plays. He's a big reason why this defense is number one. I think about up front with Jalen Carter. Jalen Carter is another guy. Like the risk that Howie Roseman has taking a Jalen Carter who fell to him at number 9. And remember, he was supposed to be the first guy taken if that wasn't a quarterback. That was supposed to be the guy. But of course, he had his off-field issues. They get him at 9. Again, another risky play that's all worked out. I can go to Cooper DeJean. I can go to, these guys who've gone out there and who've made really big impact. I think they've designed a great team to take on the mighty, mighty Chiefs.
High risk, high reward, but that's why you keep a job like that for a long time if you're Howie Roseman and the Philadelphia Eagles. Well done. Those are your headlines just to start opening week.